evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for attending this evening's program, both in person and at home. My name is Helen Liu, and I'm the Programming and Partnerships Manager at Cary Library. Before we begin, please silence your cell phones if possible, so as not to interrupt the performance. We unfortunately won't be able to take any questions from our at-home audience. This program will be recorded and posted to the library's YouTube channel. I would also like to thank the generous donors to the Cary Library Foundation for helping us make programs like this possible. Books by our poets are available for purchase in the back of the room. For Lisa's books, I will also share a link in the chat to purchase her books online. Please join us next Thursday for the next installment of our poetry series. The evening's readers will be Cammy Thomas, Gloria Mindock, and Joyce Swaggerty. Now I'd like to introduce the host of our poetry series, Cammy Thomas. Cammy's latest collection, Tremors, received poetry honors from the 2022 Mass Book Awards and was named the distinguished favorite in the 2022 NYC Big Book Awards. Her first book, Cathedral of Wish, received the Norma Farber First Book Award from the Poetry Society of America. A fellowship from the Ragdale Foundation helped her complete her second book, Inscriptions. All are published by Four Way Books. Her poems have recently appeared in Lily Poetry Review, On the Seawall, Pangyris, and elsewhere. Her poem, Far Past War, was text for a choral work by her sister, composer Augusta Reed Thomas, which was premiered by the Cathedral Choral Society in 2022. Now please welcome Cammy.
Thank you very much, Helen. I want to thank the library for making this series possible, and especially for this time, Helen, and also Matt Schumann. It's a pleasure working with you folks, always. Thank you. And thanks everybody for coming here in the room and also in the great room of the sky. And of course, thanks to our poets for coming and reading this evening. I want to just say again, I'm thrilled that they're here, and books are available after, so I hope you'll consider that. That would be wonderful. We will have just a short time availability for question and answer all the way at the end of the program, and we'll just take a couple of questions if anybody has them, so just so that you're aware of that now. All right, and you can see that one of our readers is in the ether and see her there, which is very good. And I'm going to introduce her. She will be reading first. Lisa Usani Phillips. You know, I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your middle name. How did I do?
That's pretty good. Yeah, pretty good.
Sorry.
No.
Is an Asian American writer and editor. Her work has appeared in or is forthcoming from the Beacon Street Review, Current Biography, House Mountain Review, Rickshaw, Asian American Notes and Images, and Salt Magazine, among others. She's received several honors for her writing, including the Emerson College Emerging Writer Award for MFA students. Her debut poetry and fiction collection, Guest People, was published by Wheeling Turn Books in October 2022. Lisa.
Thank you so much, Cammy. And thank you everybody for coming out, and thank you to the Cary Library, to Matt and Helen for hosting, making this possible. My first poem is Ni Hao. Ni Hao. My market basket face mask keeps my smile from infecting others as I hail my fellow shoppers well met, nodding as we navigate the one-way bread aisle and each other, price check the good milk, splurge on the passable makimono. I say ni hao to the sushi chef who says it back, our little joke. My second poem is Alias. Alias. Grandfather gave me a Chinese name, an alias no one knows but family. Lishan in Putonghua, common language. Lisan in Tufa, mother tongue of the guest people. Lisha, if you are grandma, all written the same. Li, graceful, Mei Li de Li. Shan, coral, swaying in the sea. And this next one is called Precious Jewel. Precious jewel. Xian, precious jewel. Not worth much when you're starving. Xian, my mom's name when she was sent age 7 or 8 to Changao Chun, where revolutionaries forced her grandparents to confess crimes they did not commit, burned everything they did not really own, save the occasional half chicken from neighbors who had to hide their mercy. Xian, her father's favorite singer of songs unknown. Xian, back in Bangkok, where guest people took Thai names to blend in. Usani is hers, also precious jewel, also mine, tucked carefully between my English names, like a secret password or a seed. This next poem is somewhat of a concrete poem. I don't know. That's what it looks like on the page. And it is called Slant. Chimpanzee, chimpanzee, that's me. 7, 8, mom, dad, brother, sister, Dodge Dart back seat. T-neck, T-rose, pale wan house walls, red roof, oak tree, inner porch, blind windows, grass carpet, bike pony, garlic fried, long day, takeout cartons, uncles, aunties, bowls clatter, stories chatter, smiles, ha-ha, poo-poo platter. Goodbye, my turn. Eyelids pulled, slant, slit, like theirs, like mom's. I want, what's wrong? Head shake, too bad. Bad girl, long drive back home. This next one is called Hiss. Hiss. The artist injected a lurid mermaid into my left breast. I did not know how to say no to the siren call of her needle, buzzing the endorphins in sting by sting. I did not know how to say, this is not my mermaid. That is not her fish. My mermaid wears clouds, not a teal kimono with a fuchsia sash, nor does her tail flash gold as she floats above Hokusai waves, a cyanotic sea. My mermaid's eyes are not almonds, but half moons on tiptoe. Her nose is pinched, snug as a dumpling. Her cheeks swell just like mine. She sleeps on a leaf of rainy day jade. Our earlobes, fat with luck, listen, listen for the sibilance of our hiss, our ocean receding. And let's see, I will close with the last poem in the collection, and it's called Saved. Saved. It's almost too perfect, the rotting trunk, saved from the dump, licorice paint sloughing off the plywood sides of the bone gray box, wide open and unhinged on the patio, filled with last year's branches, oak leaves, loam, a raised bed to thwart the rabbits, the need to put down roots. Gone the brown bag of granny squares you knitted long ago, a blanket as yet unfinished for you, for me, a baby unknown, fed milk and juk, perhaps, a handful of rice and a pot of water, maybe chopped liver, The thirsty heart was your name for it, for lovers in love. Their secrets soaked first, then planted in sand, not too deep or they won't quicken in time for the harvest. All you ever needed was inside that trunk, but in the end, you didn't need it anymore. That was the secret. You didn't need it, and nothing is ever wasted. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was fantastic.
Thank
Boy,
you.
you really know how to do spectacular things with very, very simple words. It's really wonderful.
Thank you.
Lisa, would you like to stay on the screen?
I think I guess I can come back for the questions, but yeah, I think it would probably be better if I went off screen.
Okay.
I can stop video if you want.
Yeah, you can do that.
That's a good idea. That's better, because then we don't have to turn the thing off. We've been having a little trouble with the on and off. Sometimes it goes off and it doesn't want to come back on again. So this way we don't have to risk it. Now for our next reader. Born in Hartford, Connecticut in 1975, Jason Tandon is the author of 5 collections of poetry: This Far North, The Actual World, Quality of Life, Hour Martyrdom, and Give Over the Heckler and Everyone Gets Hurt. Winner of the 2006 St. Lawrence Book Award for a first book from Black Lawrence Press. His poems have appeared in many journals and magazines, including Ploughshares, Prairie Schooner, the Southern Review, Beloit Poetry Journal, Barrow Street, the Cortland Review, North American Review, Alaska Quarterly Review, Esquire, AGNI Online, Passages North, Poetry East, Poetry International, Spoon River Poetry Review, and Tar River Poetry. That's just about everywhere. His poems have also been featured on NPR and on Verse Daily. Jason.
Thank you very much, Cammy, for the introduction and for hosting. Thank you, Matthew, if you're out there, for organizing, and to Lisa for your poems. I'm not sure where to look. Wonderful to hear your work. And to Anna for joining us as well. I was lucky enough to read with Anna a couple weeks ago. Looking forward to hearing your poems again. And I'm going to begin with a poem, not my own. So it's National Poetry Month, and I'd like to always try to feature the work of others if I can. And this one in particular is for a teacher of mine, Charles Simic, who passed away back in January. And last night, I was at the University of New Hampshire for memorial service, which was very beautiful. Several poets came and delivered just wonderful eulogies and read poems, some of their favorite poems by Charlie. And I would like to start off by doing the same. So this first poem is by Charles Simic. It's called The Partial Explanation. Seems like a long time since the waiter took my order. Grimy little luncheonette, the snow falling outside. Seems like it has grown darker since I last heard the kitchen door behind my back, since I last noticed anyone pass on the street. A glass of ice water keeps me company. At this table I chose myself upon entering, and a longing, incredible longing, to eavesdrop on the conversation of cooks. And then I'm going to read a poem that I wrote essentially for Charles Simic. It's a recent poem, a new poem, and I had the opportunity to review his last book, which came out just before he passed away. And so that's where the title comes from. It's called Reading the New Charles Simic Book I Was Saving for Vacation. This black fly won't leave me alone as I sit on a screened-in porch at an island resort with a view that slopes to the sea. The summer day dawning, here and there a cloud, the color of ripe melon. Again and again I swat the air as it flits from my head to my bare legs, buzzes in and out of each ear, then dips into my cooling cup of coffee and pauses on the marble table to rub its sinister hands. And now I will read from my latest book, This Far North, which just came out a month ago. It's a collection of about 60 poems, very brief poems that are sort of follow the seasons. They're mainly set in and around New England. And several of the poems are set up in New Hampshire, up by Ossipee Lake, if you're familiar with that area. And this first poem that I'll read from the book is called Man Paddling Canoe with Dog. The sky so white, there is no sky. The water, a tarnished plate of silver. The dog sits dutifully. No, sits like a king who says nothing, who looks around unmoved, his golden robe shedding. And this next one has a little bit of a longer title. It's called Driving Down to the Casino, I Think of You, Grieving for Your Dead Father. From a speeding distance, the field was a sheet of hammered brass. Though where I sit, having stepped the muddy gully, is greening. And I should say, I'd like to warn people, my poems are very short, so just be ready for that. I like to say, as soon as I've begun, I'm about to finish, so just as a heads up. And this next one is, this next one, it's a bit of a persona poem. It's called Today I Saw a Rainbow. Today I saw a rainbow, the whole arc for the first time, the entire spectrum of color spanning the lake. You could tell me about reflection and refraction, droplets, dispersion, and sun. I paddled the western shore, looking for that goddamn pot. And this is a poem that I will read from my wife, who's kind enough to join me this evening. And I think those of you who are parents out there, this poem may resonate with you. It's called Please Understand. When I woke to my daughter, slapping my ear and shouting about the dolphin she rode in her dream, my son upside down in the armchair, asking what the word vehemence means. And you on the pillow, pale-faced, open-mouthed, dry-lipped, and snoring. I thought, if I must die, let it be now. And I'm going to read a few spring poems from the book. So this first one is called Birds Again, and it's in memory of a student of mine who passed away 4 years ago, right around this time in April. And it's called Birds Again. After last spring's surprise grackle attack, and the autumn squirrel's burgling acrobatics, I almost didn't fill the feeders this year. They came back, the heavy-set doves content to peck what falls in the dirt, the bullying blue jays, the cardinal, always so startling to see that red, that beak blot of orange. And you know, since my wife is here, I'll read one more for her. Just my muse, as it were. This poem is called Middle Life. It's been raining now for 3 straight days. Standing at the sink, staring at the dark green grass, the rotten fence, the absolute gray of what sky we can see between the houses and trees. My wife asks, "Tea?" And here's a poem called After a Week of News. My son turns 9, and there's bowling with bumpers, dumplings and mushu at Mandarin cuisine, and a homemade cake with buttercream frosting. So rich, so sweet, we push back our plates as if heaped with Brussels sprouts and broccoli. And I'll read, here's a very short poem. And this is a poem for all of you kayakers and canoers and just lovers of lake life in general. It's called Loons. And this is a description of one of my favorite activities to do on a summer's day. Loons. Why is it such a pleasure when they dive? To scan the surface for where they might reappear and be wrong every time. And I'll just, I'll finish with 2 more. I remember seeing a poet take a drink and announce that they were taking a drink and sort of really calling attention to it because there was no kind of subtle way to take a drink in the middle of a reading. And I thought, what are they going on and on about? And ever since then, anytime I take a drink, I do the same thing. So this next poem is a poem about a reunion I was able to have with some friends a few years ago after a long time of having not seen them. And it takes place in a park in Brooklyn where you can look out over the skyline of Manhattan. And the poem is called There We Were. Hunched against the railing, gazing at the river and the city skyline, one of us imagined jumping onto a truck below and riding the roof back home. One of us brought up the towers, wondered what the air must have smelled like, the screaming in the sky. One of us talked about ramps and remodeling for a son who woke with a headache and had not walked or talked since. One of us scuffed his soul against the curb, told about the bridge, the men with the bends who dug to the bedrock. One of us said there was ice cream nearby. Our backs hurt. It was breakfast time. And this last poem is a poem I wrote after a trip, my first trip with my family to Truro, Massachusetts. So for those of you who don't know, this is outer, almost at the very edge of the Cape. And it's called Out Here at the Edge of the Land. And it's in 4 parts, so it has 4 subtitles, which I'll read. Out here at the edge of the land. At first light, I walk the splintered boardwalk, smoothed by wind and sand, salt and morning mist, and climb the crest of a whale-back dune. I sit and scratch bites on my unwashed body, bleed every itch. Bayside. Today, I will not realize that my friend, drowned at 21, would have turned 46. Even when I find that silver fish pumping its gills on the sandbar, its black eyes surprised by the tide. Dog days. I look into the mirror's small square and see my face stubbled white, hair thick with sweat, nose greased and blistered at the tip, my chapped lips grinning ear to ear. It was the mourning doves. It was the mourning doves that woke me, hidden in the pitch pines, and the rattling click of a black crow. When I woke, it was the honeybee I saw entering the clover, and the monarch butterfly fluttering above me as I swam far from shore. Thank you very much.
Anyway, thanks for that very much, Jason. And I loved that last one about Truro, I must say. It brought back a lot of memories for me of Wellfleet, but next door town, so pretty close. Our final reader tonight is Anna V.Q. Ross. Her most recent book is Flutter. Her most recent book, Flutter Kick, won the Benjamin Saltman Poetry Award. Her previous books include If a Storm, Figuring, and Hawk Weather. She's a Fulbright Scholar, a Mass Cultural Council Fellow, and poetry editor for Salamander, and her work appears or is forthcoming in the Kenyon Review, Harvard Review, the Missouri Review, the Nation, and elsewhere. She teaches at Tufts University and through the Emerson Prison Initiative. Anna lives with her family in Dorchester, where she runs the poetry and music series Unearthed Song and Poetry, and raises chickens. There are always a lot of stories about that. So, Anna.
Thanks so much, Cammy and Jason and Lisa. It's really nice to be here. I'm going to remember to put my glasses on, unlike the last time I read. So it's really nice to be here. I'm going to read from this book. It's a book about motherhood and daughterhood and inheritance. And some things that we inherit that we want to inherit and some that we want to give back. And I'm going to start with the first poem in the book, which is called House. I come from there with lavender growing small against the bricks. I come from there with a little white jug and a tea towel on the tray. I come from there with a worn stair rug and a wooden banister, leading up 2 floors past bedroom doors to a room at the very top, with a window looking down to a square of grass and a garden wall, where roses grow with tangled canes rooting between the cracks. I come from where I once was told someone attached a lock on her bedroom door and didn't say why, or who she feared might open it through all the years she stayed in the house with lavender grown small against the bricks, and the roses rooting through the wall, and the tea towel on the tray, and the little white jug and worn stair rug she descended the day she went away. I come from there. So my mom is not from here. She's from Ireland, and that poem gets into that. That's actually the home of my granny, my late granny, to whom the book is dedicated. I'm going to move kind of swiftly forward to. Actually, no, I'll stop. I won't move quite so swiftly forward. There are a lot of self-portraits in this book, and whenever I explain about the self-portraits, I say that they were a way of preserving myself a little bit. After I had my second child, my son, I kind of wondered who I was anymore. It was a very different life than I'd had. And I kind of out of the blue started writing self-portraits kind of as a way of seeing my life again. And this is the very first one that I wrote. It's in response to an article I read in The Guardian about a theory of our moon, which is that one side of our moon is quite smooth and the other side is very cratered. And at least according to these scientists in The Guardian, that may be because we used to have 2 moons orbiting Earth and one was gradually kind of sucked into the other. So, self-portrait as smaller moon. The remnants of a second moon that orbited the Earth billions of years ago may be splattered across the far side of our Earth, scientists claim. The 2 appear to have crunched together in a gentle collision. That's from The Guardian, August 3rd, 2011. I wasn't looking at her. Instead, I watched years of tides dismantle coasts, watched my shadow paint its pupil on revolving blue, watched haze, watched birds, watched ice caps spread and shrivel, but not the path I traced above or who flew with me. What is belonging? I floated in my dust and ore, collecting light like sympathy from strangers, and when it came, the wind felt this way too, polite intrusion. Pay attention, mothers say, look both ways, don't follow strangers. But in that turning I forgot, startled by this one so close behind, I wobbled toward her, healing before I knew I moved. Where does the moon go, Mama? I went to mountains, foothills, craters, spread myself against the dark back of this lovely other, burrowed in, as lighter rocks slipped singly by, pursuing their own gravity. All Hallows. The year that she was 3, my daughter was a fox for Halloween. Orange felt hood with ears, a tail stitched to her back, and painted on whiskers. The only girl in the preschool parade not dressed as a princess. That was the same year something kept finding its way through the back wall of Granny's garden to dig up moles. Mornings we'd find the excavated holes, entrances we hadn't known existed. A fox, said Mr. Lovely, who came to cut the grass. We'd need to put down poison. But would that remove the fox or just the moles, we asked. And wouldn't it be better to find the wall's gap and fill it? My daughter cried for the fox she never saw, begged us not to kill it. But still, she didn't want to go alone into the garden. I think now she was trying on fear that Halloween. Not the fox circling the henhouse kind, but the unseen thing that leaves a gash exposing mud and plunder beneath the grass you thought you knew. In the picture we took, I hold her and her baby brother on my lap. He stares at her strange ears and painted face, amazed. She bares her teeth and locks the camera in her gaze. That's the same garden as from the first poem, and my granny really did have a very elderly man named Mr. Lovely who would come and cut the grass for her. He was lovely. So something that's different about this book from my earlier books is that there's just a lot of talking in this book, and I think that's because one of my experiences of motherhood is just constant interruption. Like you're just always, you're just trying to get through your day and get up and get dressed and go to work and do all those things, and your kids are interrupting you, the phone is ringing, you're getting a text, the news is on, somebody needs something from you at work. It's just like you're just really trying to keep going while taking all of this in and, whatever it brings up in you. And this poem uses found text from Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's testimony at Brett Kavanaugh's Senate confirmation hearing to sort of get at that interruptedness and what the interruptions do to us, what they teach us, maybe. It's called Fugue. Can you tell us what you don't forget? The senator's voice repeats from the radio. It's rush hour, Boston, I-93, driving home from dance class with my daughter in the back seat, her 12-year-old legs stretched long in pink body wrappers brand spandex as she wonders aloud what we're going to eat for dinner. Air brakes wheeze, then release beside us as a bus muscles past. And should I change the station as the senator's voice repeats, can you tell us what you don't forget? Above the traffic, rush hour, Boston, I-93, my daughter in the back seat, girl whose body I once unwrapped from mine. Is she listening now as the woman speaks? I was pushed onto the bed. His weight was heavy. I shake my head. Boston, rush hour, I-93, as if I could swerve by what edges up in me. He put his hand over my mouth. It was hard for me to breathe. Boston, rush hour, I-93, but I'm cruising a suburban street of dandelion lawns, legs the same age as my daughter, who jams her knees against my seat when I hit the brakes as one last car squeezes ahead of me. Can you tell us? Boston, rush hour, I-93 is fixed to a grid of red. What you don't forget? Taillights that bleed their after images. Can you, against gray sky, I'm tired, forget? Picturing my bed back home. What you don't? Quilt pulled tight against the sheets. Can you, don't forget? Or is it that other bed? What you, and what year was it? Forget, don't. What day? Don't. Can you forget? How? Tell us. Don't tell what. Did he? What? Can you forget? Don't tell us. Touch me? I was wearing a one-piece bathing suit. I believed he was going to rape me. Boston, rush hour, I-93. A taillight flickers. Horns begin to beep. How many times will I repeat this drive? Mom, when are we going to move? Her voice reaches toward me, and I ease my weight up off the brake, considering the question. The miles like bodies fall between us and what I don't forget. In Boston, rush hour, I-93, driving home from dance class with my daughter in the back seat. I'm going to move from that one to a poem about my son. A few years ago, another thing that I do a lot as a parent is read stories. And this one came out of some stories I was reading and some questions he had. It's called Explaining Tampons to My Son. Mama, what are those? He asks, pointing to the small cardboard box that appears monthly on the toilet tank. So I tell him, inside, uterus, a baby could grow, doesn't. Serious-eyed, he listens. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt, I lie. No baby, he says. Yes, baby, I nod. No baby. We've been reading Greek myths, the gods swallowing their children or hiding them away in caves, Zeus ravishing women into cows and islands and ash. Did it hurt? Hera fuming, the other Olympians gorgeous on their thrones, trying to get one over on each other on earth. No blood, but ichor and ambrosia to smooth their battle nicks. I think of washing my sheets this morning, generations of smiling TV women in my head, calmly conquering grass stains, grease, mud, blood, the dried in and caked on. Back on the couch, he leans close, squeezing himself against me. Keep reading. We've reached Troy, a whole city, and so many favored heroes demolished over a goddess snit fit and a greedy boy, before the Romans take over with their temples not so beautiful, but more luxurious. What's luxurious? He asks. Expensive, I tell him. Something everyone wants. But not beautiful, he asks. Maybe not. This is confusing. Also comfortable, I say. It's the end of the story now. All the gods renamed, then given up to constellations almost obscured by light pollution and bedtime schedules. Mama, have you finished shedding your blood? He asks after brushing his teeth. Mostly, I say. He nods, burrowing down into the luxury of his bed. And he really did ask me that. I took that to a workshop one time and somebody said, no 6-year-old would ever ask that question. And I was like, mine did. He has a good ear, that kid. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to read another self-portrait, and I'll just say that this is a self-portrait that I never wanted to write. And when you have children who go to public school, you live in this strange sort of dual consciousness of, yes, they need to go to school every day, and oh my God, are they going to come home? Like Jason, we actually both grew up in, I was also born in 1975, although not in Hartford, but I grew up in West Hartford, which is quite close to Sandy Hook. And so I began to write this shortly after that horrible massacre. One of the people who lost a child there was a friend of mine who played the saxophone in the band, the jazz band that I was part of in high school, Jimmy Green. He's a fabulous musician. So I started writing it then, but I wasn't able to finish it actually for many years because I couldn't figure out how to handle it. So this is called Self-Portrait with Refrain. Every day, your children go to school. It is a beautiful school, red brick upon a hill, with windows that face out to sea. Your son's classroom on the bottom floor, your daughter's on the second. From her square table, she can see the harbor islands humped like animals asleep within the bay, the train line running along shore. Every day you take that train to work. Whatever you are doing as you ride, talking, reading, scanning your phone for news, you look up as the school comes into view. You look up to your son on the bottom floor, your daughter on the second. Every day your children go to school. Every day, passing below, you look up and think of the heavy steel front door that clicks when it locks behind their backs each morning as they enter the school. You think of other doors. One opens on the basketball court, two more on the asphalt lot behind the school where parents collect in the afternoon. One opens to your son's class on the bottom floor. Every day your children go to school, and every day you think of the doors. You think of the boy or man who holds something in his hand as he tries the locked front door. You think of him turning, careful, the object pressed to his chest and walking to the basketball court door. Why do you think of him? Mid-morning, and the sun finds his white hands, finds the faded orange rim of the hoop, finds the muzzle's matte black curve as he moves to check the locked back doors one by one. It is a lovely day, this day when your children go to school. Spring with a slight breeze from the sea. Why not leave the door open to it, your son's teacher thinks, so the breeze can reach the children on their mats at rest time. I never sleep at rest time, your son declares, and so lying awake on his robot sheets, he sees the man enter the room, sees the thing in his hands almost familiar, like the one great-grandma sent at Christmas, but not red and blue, and what comes out is not rubber balls. Why think of this? Why wonder if your daughter on the second floor of the beautiful school with windows that look out to sea recognizes gunfire in the noise 2 floors below? Does she hear no more fighting over who got the bigger bowl? All the world of ice cream now hers alone. The known night tides of breath and shift erased from the bottom bunk. Every day your children go to school, the same school high upon the hill. Every day you take the train, passing too far away to hear if there is silence in the room on the second floor. The drill practiced so often. Lock the door, sit on the rug, pretend you aren't there. From each window, the harbor islands flicker, a hide and seek of wave and heat. But why think of this? Every day, the children waiting, and you too far away to hear. The shuddering train that draws you on like sand, a wave pulls back to sea. You look up from your book in time to see the open door, the sirens gathering. Every day, your children go to school. Every day you pass below, too far away to hear and look up. Who is that standing in the doorway? Why must you think of this? The train picking up speed now, soon entering the tunnel where you'll lose sight of the beautiful building, red brick upon a hill with windows that face out to sea, where every day your children go to school. I think I'll end with a short, two poems. This poem at Collinsville Bridge appeared in Provincetown Arts a couple of years ago, and it's a story of childhood again, of girlhood again, but one that's maybe a little bit older in its place as than the one I read at the very beginning. It's called At Collinsville Bridge, so another Connecticut poem. At Collinsville Bridge. We knew the bridge before we knew it. Rusted X of girders, a diagram of long gone warehouse and railroad. Knew if we could master the 60-foot wingspan of its drop into the lap of water loose against bank, we would know something better. Aim for my wake, she said, a bull's eye pupil dilating. We were not our mothers yet, and so could hold the story of that boy who jumped too late last August and found the rapids, a thin cloth on a rocky table that broke his fall as proof of luck, not his, but ours, to straddle along with the iron rail before we unfastened ourselves to fly. And I'll end with the last poem in the book. This is an ekphrastic piece, actually, and it's gone through 2 rounds of ekphrasis. I wrote the poem in response to a painting by Shelley Julian Bundy from a book of portraits. They were actually fictional portraits of North Dakotan women, all identified by their closest male relative. So I wrote this poem, and then I teach a class at Emerson with a colleague, Scott Wheeler, who's a wonderful composer, and he took the poem in response to the painting and he set it to music. So it's now a painting, a poem, and a song. So this is One Time, and the painting that it responds to is Shelley Julian Bundy's painting. This is Mrs. Lawrence Schlegel from outside of Hettinger, North Dakota. She left for good one time, but came back. One time. She left for good one time, but came back. She let her hair grow long and the grays come in. Nobody ever asked about it, but she left for good one time. She followed the fence line out, the grass dry and rust-tipped where it chased her calves. She was wearing the wrong shoes and no socks either, but she'd left and it was for good. 2 does started from their beds under a choke cherry. They cleared the top wire of the fence almost before she'd seen them and kept moving into the trees by the ditch. She was going and going, she was gone, mosquitoes tracking her shoulder blades, wringing her ankles. She kept the fence line to her left and the creek to her right as she left for good, for better or worse, the dishes and whatever had been said at dinner, the whole damn dinner. She was leaving. She was and was and was. The smell of her falling under sagebrush. No wind yet and the sun not down. You'll take what God gives you, they said, as her children wriggled beside her and the last bite on her plate gave her the fisheye. But she'd left for good and the creek agreed. flashing the last acre until it slid under the single barbed strand that marked the neighbor's land, and someone else called someone else in to supper. It would be bedtime soon, the nighthawks buzzing the trees for insects, their chicks lodged among river stones below. It had been for good when she left, all of it, she knew, and also that someone would need a last drink of water now and a song from when you were little. Someone would need to touch her hair, to pat it softly until sleep came this time and for good. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That was terrific. It's so funny because when you read the first poem, I thought, it's the first time I felt dread about a tea towel. And by the end, I realized there's a lot of fear, and it's just really beautifully turned. I could feel it, but I think it started with that tea towel. There was something a little bit off about it. Anyway, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. That was a terrific reading. I'm very, very appreciative of Lisa as well online. And I want to give people a chance to ask questions if anybody has one. There are books in the back, as you know. And again, thank you all so much for coming. It was a terrific group of readers. Are there any questions? There don't have to be, but we've left a little time if you want. Go ahead.
I think that this is an answer that could go on and on, but I'm curious if anybody wants to speak about how you order how you order for a collection.
How do you order poems for a collection? Good luck.
For this one, there's a lot of agony involved, and a lot of like spreading things around on the ground. But I do, in this book and in my first book, I look for themes. And so I roughly grouped them by theme and kind of age of like the my kids are in the book a lot. Yeah, but I nearly made a huge change like at the very last minute, and then like was talked out of it by my. So I don't know. It's a really tricky business ordering, but I do try and make the poems feel like they're talking to each other. That's important.
Would anybody else like to answer that question?
For me, it took a village, just like the rest of the book. This is my first book, and the poems that I wrote them all during the pandemic, and it was through 2 different writing workshops. And 2 of my friends, Sarah Kutera and Frankie Wright, were in one of my workshops, and they saw the manuscript and decided, hey, we're going to publish this. We're going to start Wheeling Turn Books. So, and then there's also my cousin Julie, who ran the other workshop, and she is just like a poet and editor. And anyway, she's multi-talented, multi-hyphenate. And the 3 of them really helped me shape this book. So I would say that I felt, it's not that I had nothing to do with it, but I had a lot of help in shaping the sections.
I mean, the last 2 books have been very similar. I just write when I have a critical mass.
Speak into the microphone so that.
Is this
Go
okay?
for it.
Yeah. Once I have a critical mass of poems, about 60 to 75, I lay them all out, and they pretty much go chronologically as I wrote them. But then I have my wife look at the arrangement, and she calls attention to certain things. There's lines that, a line ends with a certain word, and then the next poem begins with this. You don't want to kind of have that's her sort of pet peeve, so I go with that. But no, it's mainly chronological for the most part. Yeah, and sometimes as I'm writing the book, though, I say that's a section ender, or that's the first poem of the book. You just know it, you read it. Very organic.
Anyone else with a question?
All right, if there aren't any more questions, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Cammy and Anna and Jason and Lisa. Thank you for coming. I know it's a beautiful night, so I'm very thankful for you joining us tonight. And thank you everyone on Zoom.
And thank you,
for joining us.
Helen.
Mhm.